I'm not gonna lie. The moment I found out that we were getting an LED screen, the first thought that came to my mind was, we have to watch Transformers the movie. And we might not have time, but at least you got the trailer, at least you got to see a few robots that turn into cars. But you know, I love the movie Transformers. Like, so much so that when I found out I actually had to walk down the aisle at my wedding, I chose the soundtrack to that film to lead the way. So Transformers, oh my word, I feel like we should just watch the movie now or something like. So it's all about these alien robots that are disguised within our society as cars. And it is exactly the sort of sci-fi entertainment that I'm looking for when I watch a movie. One of the things I love the most about this series or these movies is the fact that even though there's this incredible war that's happening between these massive mechanical war machines, there is still a normal, everyday human that is necessary to save the day. Despite these robots having these guns that come out of their arms, these rocket boosters attached to their back, despite the fact that they're crushing metal within their grip, humans are essential to win that battle. You know, the first Transformers film, it tracks the story of this teenager called Sam who gets his first car. Sam finds out that his car is actually one of these robots in disguise, an alien hiding on Earth. And we find out about this intergalactic war taking place between the Autobots and the Decepticons as they battle for control of this ultimate power weapon. Oh my word, I'm already getting excited about this. But this is a battle that humans should not be part of, right? Like, this is a war that humans should really steer clear of. Like, what human could stand up to a robot that looks like a jet fighter? Yet Sam, in this film, he's determined to play his part and ends up being this key figure in saving the world and the human race. And you know, I think there's something in all of us which enjoys this sort of story because we see this happen in the world around us. Like, I know, maybe not cars transforming into robots or something like that, but situations and circumstances that seem massive and way bigger than anything we can or should be able to fight against. On an everyday basis, we come across these situations that can seem unchangeable. They can be issues on a global scale. Things like human disasters that happen across the world, war, famine, migration crises. It could be things that are like deep-rooted societal issues, racism, discrimination that happens on so many different levels and in different forms. Isolation within our community. Poverty within our city. Maybe it's something that's actually more personal, but can still seem like such a massive object before us. An addiction that has such a strong grip on us. A relationship that may seem like it's got no hope. Feelings of depression or anxiety that, if we're honest, feel like they're winning. I think that we're faced with so many of these immovable issues before us. Movies like Transformers provide us with this form of comfort almost, when we see these ordinary people play their part in defeating a superior opposing force. It's a theme that we see in movies all the time, right? Where this seemingly ordinary person can make world-altering, history-making, social-defining impact. But it's not just restricted to movies. Our society, it's been defined by individuals that go out and change things. We have examples of people like Rosa Parks, for example, whose commute home on a bus played such a pivotal role in the American civil rights movement and created social change that brought a greater degree of equality to her community than ever before. We hear about business titans, even like Jeff Bezos, who created this incredible revolutionary company, all from selling books from their garage. And you know, I think that everyone can think of people who've been able to bring change to almost every level of society. Individuals that started out, if we're being honest, just like you and I, but people who stepped up to make a change that would ripple throughout society, time, and across this earth. And you know, it can make us wonder how these sorts of people were able to make such a difference to the world around them. How did these people do such incredible things? It can make us ask, if I was able to do it, if they were able to do it, then maybe we can also do something with our lives. Maybe we would be able to overcome those seemingly unchangeable issues that we encounter. And maybe you're here today and you wouldn't actually call yourself a Christian, but you can relate to the sense of wanting to see change in the things around you, making a difference, impacting society. Well, can I just encourage you to stay with us as we explore this? Because I believe that regardless of where you might find yourself in relationship with God or church even, you still have a part to play. And I think there's something that we can learn from the life of a young Jewish girl that lived about 2,500 years ago called Esther. You see, the king of Persia at the time, she gets fed up with the queen, and so he banishes her from his presence. And so the search for her replacement begins, and they go and round up all the most beautiful young women in the entire empire so the king can have his pick. And Esther is one of these girls. Esther was an orphan. She was raised by her uncle Mordecai. But also Esther is a Jew, which at the time was one of the least popular groups in the society. And for this reason, Esther actually kept her Jewish heritage a secret amongst everyone. And so Esther is rounded up along with all of these other women and taken to the palace to go through an intense 12-month preparation period so that she would be prepared for one night with the king to make an impression. And after this night, the king is so impressed that Esther is crowned queen of the entire Persian Empire. And after Esther has become queen, things begin to turn. Things become a little bit sour because this man called Haman comes along who has this deep hate for the Jews. And Haman convinces the king that the Jews are a threat and even gets an empire-wide decree issued that says in a year's time, all Jewish people were to be killed. What the Jews were facing, it was annihilation with the king's stamp of authority on it. It was a genocide that was lawful, an entire population facing the threat of being wiped out. And so Esther's uncle Mordecai sends a message to Esther, begging her to go to the king and plead for her people's lives. And Esther is stuck in this situation where she must have been wondering, why was she there? I mean, of all people, why was she there? She hadn't been chosen because of her courage. She didn't have the wisdom or the skills of negotiation to get through this situation. I mean, she was a girl who had been chosen for her beauty because she pleased the king. Why, of all people, was she there at such a dire time for her nation? And so Esther, she's faced with this huge situation before her, and she feels completely inadequate, ill-equipped, and unable to do anything about it. And so in Esther chapter 4, 11 to 16, we read how Esther sends a reply to Mordecai saying, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that for any man or woman who comes to the king, to the inner court who is not summoned, he has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter so that they may live. I have not been summoned to the king for these 30 days. And so they related Esther's words to Mordecai. And so Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you are in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this. And so Esther goes before the king, and he allows her to approach him. And eventually Esther brings up this decree issued to kill her people and points out the evil mastermind, Haman, behind it. And the king makes a complete U-turn, issues another decree protecting the Jews, and instead has Haman hanged and his dead body impaled on a 75-foot tall pole. Gruesome, right? Almost belongs in Transformers or something like that. But the Jewish people, they are saved from annihilation and instead go on to defeat many of their enemies within the empire. And Mordecai, Esther's uncle, the Jew, ends up being second in command after the king. Not only were the Jews saved from death, but they were given far more influence and stability than ever before. They were going from being on the brink of being wiped out to becoming one of the greatest influences in the kingdom. And all because Esther went before the king. And one of the things that I find so interesting about the story of Esther, that even though it's in the Bible, God is not explicitly mentioned once. But even though it's not explicitly mentioned, you can see God's influence throughout the entire story. As much as Esther probably wished she was more courageous or better at negotiating, it was God that gave Esther the exact skills that she needed to influence the king. As much as Esther probably wished that it was Mordecai or anyone else that was in that position, it was God that had brought her to where she was at that exact time necessary to speak out. And as much as it may feel like Esther was just trying to save her own skin and that of her family, she was carrying out God's will as she brought justice into the Persian Empire, protection for God's people, and kept peace within the land. And you know, this morning we explored God's special grace, his saving grace, which is available for anyone that believes and has accepted Jesus into their life. But in so many situations, we see God's goodness available to all people, regardless of what they believe and regardless of their relationship with Jesus. We see God's common grace all around us in so many different aspects of our life. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the evenings of this series. I think that we see God's common grace in an aspect of how we as humans were actually designed. We see the grace of God in how everyone, regardless of what they believe, actually has the ability to change the things that are before them, to make the choices, the lifestyle changes, statements based on principle, to take actions that could transform the world around us, or even seriously, the whole world. I love the way that God created us. The way he did it was not to be merciless to what is happening around us, but instead to influence the situations and the issues that we encounter. I love that. I love that God created us in such a way that we are not merciless to what is happening around us, but instead we were made to influence the issues that we encounter. I believe that this intentional design is God's will for all humanity, regardless of whether we call ourselves Christians or not. Whether we go to church or whether we have complete faith in him or whether we're still asking questions, we see humans make a difference all the time, changing situations all around us. We have entrepreneurs that build companies that generate wealth and advance our society for the better. Medical professionals that provide healing and looking for more ways to give humans a better life. We have NGOs and charitable initiatives that are set up to provide help to some of the darkest areas in our society. We have individuals all around us that choose to make their tomorrow better than today and work through some of the most daunting problems before them. There are plenty of people that wouldn't call themselves Christians, but that have a spectacular impact on the world around us for the better. And I believe that in this, we see God's goodness for all people. Humans were designed to make a difference. So when we are faced with these issues that we witness in our own world, we need to be prepared to engage with what is before us. Like Esther, we need to be prepared to stand up and do something about it. And I think the first thing that we need to think about is how we control our response. You know, I remember a long time ago doing lifeguard training. Yeah. It's one of the things that has always stuck with me. And one of the first things that they teach you is to calm the situation down. When someone loses control, that is when they panic. And that is when things that aren't usually helpful seem to be what starts to happen. They start doing things that aren't in their best interests. They start pulling their rescuer underwater. They forget how they swim. And they exhaust themselves because of their lack of technique. They do things that aren't in their best interest, and they lose control of their response. Maybe when we are faced with a situation that we want to see changed, then first of all, we need to control our response and also control our fear. Our natural instinct is usually to do the opposite of standing up. The worse the problem may be, the more intimidating it may feel, and the more impossible it may seem to change. We can see issues that have been around for years and think, well, that's just the way it is. There's nothing that I can do about it. We can feel inadequate and unable to intervene. How do we deal with such an issue? Esther was terrified, right? She knew that her actions could anger the king. She knew that she was falling out of line there. She knew that she could be banished or even executed for what she was about to do. We need to control our fear. To quote Transformers, we can be heroes in our own lives, every one of us, if we only have the courage to try. The other thing that I think we need to be able to control when it comes to our response, and I was wondering about whether I should put this in, but I think it's important. We need to also be able to control our anger, especially today when so much is led by anger, especially in areas of social change when what we witness is unjust, unfair, and against what we believe is right. We need to be able to control our anger. We use the phrase blinded by anger, right? And it's so true because so often the emotion of anger can cause us to react in a way that isn't consistent to how we would usually approach things. Not all anger in itself is bad. I mean, anger can help us express ourselves, right? It can motivate us to find a solution. It can help us understand how we feel about a situation. However, we need to be in control of that emotion as well. We need to be in control of our response. And you know, sometimes it can take its cost, right? It can take its cost. It can lead to us being uncomfortable. It can lead to us having difficulties. It can lead to us maybe rubbing people up the wrong way. It could lead to us lashing out at people and doing things that we might later regret. But if we want the sort of life that impacts things around us, then it's going to have to cost us something. And to quote Transformers, no sacrifice, no victory. We need to control our fear, control our response. Talking to people can be one of the best ways to find that support to keep going. Taking a break to clear your head can help you get perspective. Writing down what you're afraid of. Challenging your fearful thoughts. Consider if it's something that has been snowballed in your mind into something that is far worse than it is. Pray, listen, and worship while you stay at home. Ask God to bring supernatural peace into your life. I think these are all helpful things that can help us control our response. The next thing is we need to respond now. Because once we are able to control our response, then we are ready to respond. Maybe God has put you where you are and made you aware of the situation before you because you need to step up and change it. Not later, not someone else. Maybe you are where you are right now for such a time as this as well. We need to stop waiting for someone else to come along and save the day. We need to stop thinking that this is a problem that we are unable to deal with right now. We need to respond. Esther's uncle acknowledges that if Esther doesn't do anything, then God's will would still be carried out and the Jewish people saved, but Esther would play no part in it. And I think it can often be the same with us. Because God has offered us this opportunity to partner with him, to change this world and to carry out his will. But if we remain silent, then our part in it may be missed out. What we need to understand is that we are exactly where we are, who we are, and in the place that we're in so that we can do something about that situation. God has created us all with this ability to change the situations before us. But usually things don't change because we aren't prepared to engage with them. We need to accept how God created us and start stepping forward to make a difference. It's amazing how God has designed humans, ordinary people that can make world-altering, history-making, society-defining impact. And those people are us. Finally, I think to fully engage with how God wants us to operate on this earth, we need something to change within us first. And I do believe that our incredible intentional design is only fully realized through a relationship with Jesus. All humans are capable of changing the world around them because of the common grace given to us by God. But God's saving grace brings us into relationship with Jesus that transforms something within us. It's a relationship with Jesus that gives us the courage, that enables us to stand against the biggest issues, because it's no longer about our strength, but it's about what God is able to do. A relationship with Jesus, it changes our motivations because we no longer have to make a difference for our life to have meaning, because it's no longer based on what we can do. We find our meaning of our life in Jesus. It's that relationship with Jesus that can take us to another level and is also available for you today. And later, I'm going to give you an opportunity if you haven't made that decision to follow Jesus. There are so many problems in the world around us. At every level, we see dark blemishes on this world. From situations that affect our whole world on a global scale to circumstances that affect us personally. There are so many things that need an answer, and humans were created in a way that they hold something within them, capable of changing these situations and creating a better world. So imagine, just imagine what would happen if we stepped up and allowed this aspect of our design to impact the world around us. Imagine the solutions that would be created as people look to bring relief to some of the most devastated areas of life. You see, your world needs you to step forward to make a difference, because you know what? Who knows? Maybe you are right where you are for such a time as this as well. Thank you.